Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Veterans in Transition in association with JMA Solutions inaugural virtual roundtable discussion. We are so excited that you have decided to join us this evening, as we have a great program in store for you. For your information, we are streaming this Facebook page. We have a dynamic panel of retired women E9s from the U.S. Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. Our moderator is the only active duty participant. I am Chief Master Sergeant retired Zenda Barnes, and I am excited to be one of your co-hosts this evening.
To all active duty military and veterans personnel who are listening and watching this evening, happy Veterans Week and thank you for your service. We also want to recognize family members as well as civilians working with various military services. I am Chief Master Sergeant retired Roslyn Davis, and I'm also excited and thrilled to be your other co-host for this evening.
We have an announcement to make before we bring out our panel. Because our moderator is active duty, we had to obtain the judge advocate's approval. We're required to mention that there is no official Air Force or DoD endorsement of this activity.
We have specific questions for the roundtable. If you have questions, type them into the chat or via Facebook at any time. We will answer them during the last 15 minutes of the program.
Without any further ado, let's bring on our panel. First, we have Command Sergeant Major, retired, Carmen Morales, U.S. Army. Sergeant Major Morales is the first female Command Sergeant Major in the history of the Georgia National Guard. Welcome, Sergeant Major Morales. Please tell us a little about yourself. Your mic isn't on. Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. First of all, I want to say happy birthday to the Marine Corps, especially to our co-panelists, Marine Corps Sergeant Major Fortner. Happy birthday, Sergeant Major. So, like she said, my name is Command Sergeant Major retired Carmen Morales. I was born in Puerto Rico. I was raised there as well, and that's where I joined the Army. I served for 27 years on active duty, and my father is a Korean War veteran, and my oldest brother is a Vietnam veteran as well. Both of those guys, they were Blue Infantry Corps, but just so you know, I'm the only paratrooper in the family. So during my 27 years in the Army, I served in many very exciting positions, but I highlight just to highlight two of them. One was being a paratrooper, of course. So thank you to the Air Force for all the rides, and being a basic combat training drill sergeant. And that was exciting too. And then, like she mentioned, my last assignment was I served as the Command Sergeant Major for the recruiting battalion here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before I introduce our next panelist, I also want to say happy birthday to the Marine Corps. Up next, we will have Sergeant Major Robin Fortner. Sergeant Major Fortner was hand-selected to serve as the Senior Enlisted Advisor for the 1st Unit, testing the integration of women in combat roles. Welcome, Sergeant Major Fortner. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thanks, Roz. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody. Happy birthday to the Marine Corps. Let me say that, 245 looking good right about now, right? So very, very happy to be here. Thank you all for having me. Again, I'm Sergeant Major Robin Fortner, recently retired from the Marine Corps after 30 years. Just a little bit about myself. Let's go back 30 years ago. Born and raised in New York City. That's where I hail from. Joined the Marine Corps with no expectation. Never thought I'd stay this long. And look at us now. We're standing tall 30 years later. And now we're veterans. So loved every minute of it. I had a lot of good assignments throughout my career. So I'm going to follow Carmen's example there and just kind of highlight maybe two of them. One, which is what Roslyn spoke about, just being hand selected to to test this theory of women in a combat role, again, taught so many different lessons, not just for me or even the Marines involved, but also for the Marine Corps and DOD at large. And then another one I'm always going to hold dear to my heart is also being a drill instructor, we call it, Carmen, same as the drill sergeant, but served 2 different tours down there. One as a drill instructor actually in the squad base, and then again as the sergeant major of at the time, and still the only segregated female boot camp within DOD right now. So again, a lot of good lessons. Looking forward to this discussion, this dynamic panel of leaders, and looking forward to the questions. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Robin.
Next, we have Master Chief Petty Officer Gina Scott. Master Chief Scott was the first female sailor to earn her enlisted surface warfare designation. Welcome, Master Chief Scott. Please tell us a little about yourself.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And of course, happy birthday to the Marine Corps. I won't say that the Navy owns the Marines. That's just put that out there. But I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised, youngest of 4 girls. I joined the Navy in July of 1986, and I retired in July of 2016 after serving 30 years in the world's finest Navy. A few highlights, maybe. I tried to be a trailblazer by being one of the first females in maybe 2 different platforms of combatants to be able to serve once combatant ships platforms were opened up to females. I look forward to being a part of this panel. I'm very excited to be here with my sisters, and I'm going to represent the Navy well. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chief Master Sergeant Retired Helen Noel. Chief Noel unselfishly donated a kidney to her brother, a victim of the Camp Lejeune water contamination health issue. Welcome, Chief Noel. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, and I look forward to being a part of this wonderful Zoom as well with these wonderful women, dynamic women that is. And I would like to also say happy birthday to the Marines. I donated I donated a kidney to my brother who was in the Marines. He was a victim of the Camp Lejeune water contamination, and I donated a kidney to him in 2009. And I just want to say that I actually joined the military in 1985, and I come from Elyria, Ohio, from a large family of 10. I joined the Air Force in 85 and happened to meet my husband in 1993 and married back into my mom's maiden name of Noel. We have 2 wonderful sons, and after 9/11, the military really started taking its toll on me and my family, and I decided to retire. When I was on active duty, I was a personnelist, and one of my most favorite jobs in the military was actually working in the Airmen and Family Readiness Center. So I look forward to being a part of this Zoom meeting on tonight, and let's do this, ladies.
Well, thank you, Helen.
You're welcome.
Next, we will have our moderator for the evening, Command Chief Master Sergeant Melvina Smith. Chief Smith is the Command Chief Master Sergeant of 8th Air Force and the Senior Enlisted Leader for the Joint Global Strike Operations Center at Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. Welcome, Chief Smith. Please tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you. I am Chief Master Sergeant Melvina Smith, and I am honored to be your moderator tonight. I'm not really sure who's more excited. I hope our audience is excited, but I am definitely excited. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, been in the military for 28 years. I will tell you my greatest accomplishment will have to be my family. So let me tell you about the 4 men in my life. My husband is also a veteran of 20 years in the Air Force. Our oldest son is an Air Force recruiter, as well as my daughter in love. She is also in the Air Force, and she works for Fayetteville State University. Our middle son is a junior in college, and our youngest is a junior in high school. So let me tell you tonight, we have 4 dynamic leaders, over 111 years of honorable service across 4 services. So Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. I'm going to stop talking and I would like you to hear from them. So we'll start off with Command Sergeant Major Morales. Command Sergeant Major Morales. And I am going to refer to them by their retired rank because I believe we owe them that. What was the motivation behind your decision to join the military? And why did you choose the Army? My mom was Army.
Okay, well, hooah. So as a little girl, I was always interested in the Army. And it's because I used to see my father's pictures in the hallway, you know, in his military uniform. And then I got to see my brother coming home from basic combat training in uniform as well. So I was really interested in joining the military. But in my family, the rule is that you graduate from high school and you go to college. So during that process, my military dream went away and I went to college like I was told. After college, I joined the workforce. I worked for a couple of years. And all of a sudden, I got that itch again. I wanted to join the Army. And so I started thinking about it. But at this time, I was a little more serious. I was a little more mature as well. And at this time, I wanted to join the Army because I wanted to serve. Not just because I wanted to have fun and do something different or leave my hometown. I just wanted to serve because I know that when I was in college, someone was paying for my tuition. And so I wanted to, in some terms, just with my service, pay back that money that was given to me to obtain an education. And so, and also join the Army because that's all I saw in my family and around me.
I think that's a great story. You wanted to be a part of something bigger. And,
Yes.
We hear that quite a bit, don't we? Sergeant Major Fortner, first of all, I would like to say congrats on your recent retirement. After 30 years, I watched your retirement ceremony.
Yes, thank you, Mel. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And happy birthday to the Marine Corps. What advice would you give to women who wish to join the military?
You know, so I'm listening to Carmen's story, and to me, she's somewhat unique as far as wanting to serve. I'm not sure everybody in the beginning, when you're 17, 18, understand what service to your country really truly means, especially maybe in more recent times as well. So, you know, I think there's so many different stories out there. Many people look towards the military for different reasons. And we got to keep that in mind, that everybody doesn't have that figure. I know for myself, I had no one to look up to as far as what military really meant. And I didn't join necessarily wanting to serve. You know, we was raised by a single parent. So there was a different motivation to get out of New York City or to make my own path, if you will. So, you know, everyone has a different story, but I would tell you in the technology-driven world that we're in today, I would encourage any person to really do their research. And you have resources so much available to you to research what service you really want to join, what benefits there are behind that, and even speak to people. That's one thing about social media. You can talk to someone all the way across the globe, if you will. So really get a better bird's eye view of what it is that each service offers. So that's the first thing I would say, is just research what it is that it actually brings for you, because your recruiter could tell you one way, you know, but to really feel it in your heart, I know for me, being a Marine now after 30 years, it's something that I had to feel from the inside out to retain me this long. To get me in the door, it was like, okay, there's some promises that, you know, sound better than me just trying to pay back a student loan. But now there's a totally different type of mentality. And I think it is going to encourage people to want to serve better when they understand a better concept or perception, if you will, about who the military people are. I don't think as a society we do well with that 100%. I think society just don't always understand a lot of the military people. So it really is important to do things like this, where we could get out our own personal, you know, thoughts and our own personal challenges and journeys that really correlate with a lot of society. So young ladies looking up to, just like Carmen did for her father, just looking up to someone who has served, they got to see it first to really know that the opportunities are out there, and not just see it in a sense of a TV show, but what is it that it truly brings? And we all know 30, 20 X years serving in the military, it's a lot of benefits that we've gained throughout this time frame, whether academically, financially, empowerment. I mean, just there's so many different accolades and contributions that I know that I attribute to being in the military. So definitely think any young person, please do your research first and definitely reach out to someone who has walked those shoes as well.
That's great. I was thinking right away about the fact that we hear so many people's story, their whys, but I truly believe we're all recruiters. And at one point, there were a lot of influencers in our life. And so we heard about some influence, right? And so it is important for them to hear, for you to continue to serve like you are doing now, because they will see themselves in you. So thank you for that. This is for all our panel members, but I want to start off with Master Chief Scott. And I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges and opportunities you face specific to being a female during your career?
Ooh, deep breath. Coming up through the ranks, I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. So I can say as African American or minority, definitely female. So I kind of like unicorns. If you saw one, you got excited and you were, you kind of tried to ride that wave if you had that common sense and you tried to follow along. People tended to come after me, as we can say, and not trying to sound like slang, but people tried me on a daily basis because either they thought that perhaps I was a token in the sense that, oh, okay, well, the board they have to make one whatever, or why is your record better than mine, or something like that. So there was always something. So once I got to the position that we are now, and probably 2 or 3 pay grades, the Navy has something called the Chief's Mess. So once you put on E7, the uniform changes, and that's huge for us. You're in khakis. So from then on, there was the onset of the challenges, which why you kind of like and not me. And the majority of that, of course, came from the men. The Navy is still a male-dominated organization. So we still have 1 or 2 ratings that don't have senior female leadership as far as Master Chiefs. So I'm in the works to actually try to look into that and to ask those questions, like why this is 2020. The Navy is 200 plus years old. Why don't we have women in positions of leadership? Because for me, as I was coming up through the ranks, unless somebody knew you and they knew your record, you might not have had a female in leadership that could go and sit boards, selection boards. And if somebody wasn't there that knew you or knew your story or knew your record, you might not be selected because it might not be a female there to say, hey, we need to do something with your quotas and something like that. So the challenges for me were probably just dealing with people that thought for whatever reason that I wasn't worthy or that I was going up through the ranks. My progression was a fluke. So I could not, the challenges was I couldn't look like I look and go to sick call or sick bay or medical every day and get where I got. And I'm not ashamed to say that, because for those of us that may be watching this in the Navy that look like me, that as a female and as a minority, that was the truth.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Chief Noel, I'd like to ask you the same question. So specific to being female during your career, what are some of the challenges and opportunities you faced?
A big challenge that I faced, just like Gina, is being Black and being a female. I recall an incident when I went to the NCO Academy. I went in, it was around 1996 timeframe, and it was at a McGuire Air Force Base. When I got there as part of the introduction, when we walked upstairs to this one area, it was all white men, pictures of all white men on the wall. And now this was in 1996, imagine that. And I thought, the first thing I thought, I just had this eerie feeling about myself. And I thought, now clearly, there should at least be a Black person on the wall. That was one of the main things that came to my mind. I wasn't the only one feeling that way, because every Black person that went there and came to the training felt the same way. So we decided we were going to approach the commandant about it, just to ask the question. I remember when we all got together as a group and we went into his particular office to approach him on the issue. Everybody backed down, but me. I became the lone voice, but I wasn't gonna back down. And as a result of that, word got back to my duty station. I guess that they kind of labeled me as a troublemaker. And my first time promotion to E8, I was denied that promotion. And I know without a doubt that it was as a result of me speaking out. But I vowed at that particular moment that I was gonna speak out and I wasn't gonna be afraid to speak for people overall, for women and for Black people. So I just continued to do that. And I had plenty of wonderful opportunities because I served on the Black History Month committee while I was in women's history committees. So I was able to achieve a lot, but that in and of itself, it kind of set me back. But nonetheless, I kept on pushing. I made E9 at my first time and I have no regrets.
That's great. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing it. Command Sergeant Major Morales, anything to add to that?
Yes, I remember or listening to the other ladies about their challenges. Obviously, I had my different challenges, but one that I remember, and is kind of funny to me because when I joined the military, I was a little older. I was 25, so I had everyone around me. You know, we're all different. I mean, I come from Puerto Rico. I have issues with my language. I'm a woman. I'm 25. And so when the challenges to me were opportunities. So I was on a mission that I was going to be successful. I was on a mission that I was going to be the best I could be at everything that was thrown at me. So I remember being at PLDC, that's our primary leadership course. And we were rehearsing an ambush that we were planning to do later that evening. And so we were moving in squad elements. And so each squad had an M60 assigned to the squad. And I was the only female on the squad. And so if you know a little bit, an M60 weighs about 20 something pounds without ammo and without a tripod. And an M16 will weigh about 10 pounds with a 30 round magazine. So you're carrying all that. And it was given to me. I was made the gunner because I was a woman. And so when I'm looking at this platoon sergeant, I'm looking at him like, I'm going to prove to you that I can handle this. And I'm gonna die trying, but I'm gonna be successful at this. And that was very early in my career. So everything that came my way, I saw it as an opportunity for me to be better and to get further ahead of everybody else. That was my own competition is me. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of my challenges.
And you turned it into an opportunity, just like you said. I'm sure you gained a lot of respect out of that.
Absolutely, yes.
That's great. Sergeant Major Fortner, 30 years. I know you have opportunities and challenges that you can speak about.
Yeah, I mean, very similar. I think we all travel down the same path, at least similarly down the same path. And it really is about the attitude that you take from the onset of how you can actually persevere through it. So from being two minorities, whether it's being the female or the African-American group, and very often the only one in a room, right? So you really learn early how to deal with that. Just like the other ladies, very, very often, I think the biggest challenge for me was definitely being from the gender side, just being a female, period. I'm sitting down right now, but I'm 6 foot tall. So when I walk into a room, there's not a whole lot of, doubt, if you will, that I'm gonna hold my own, if you will, so, and my mouth ain't, we quiet right now, but my mouth can get pretty, straightforward. So there was never too much doubt with that, but still, I was always still an African-American woman. And you see it, I can resonate with Gina. tested on several different occasions where you gotta buck up or you gotta stand your ground and you gotta, but I learned as I matured how to find that balance, not to be the angry Black woman either. Because as I got more rank, I wanted to make sure that, again, everything I did would represent everybody else behind me, right? It became so not about me. It became just, I know I'm representing everybody else. So as I matured, I learned how to mature and lead and still have the same respect. Not easy, but I'm saying my challenge, as I realized, once I knew I wasn't going to get out after 4 years, then I really delved myself into that responsibility, which I put on myself, but I knew it was important to say, what am I doing? What circles am I in? And what barriers can I break down for more people behind me? And I knew that if depending on how I went at it, I always thought about it in a strategic sense. Men don't always have to think about that. They just do. So, that's, being a female in a senior leadership positions became more and more challenging the longer I stayed in, without a doubt. I mean, there's a thing to be said about diversity and inclusion, and I don't remember who said it, but they talk about it in a sense of, it's different from being invited to the party and being asked to dance. Got it. It's a check in a box. Okay, we may be in a room, but where's the inclusivity, that comes along with it? And that's something that you got to fight through the longer you stay in. So I can resonate with every last one of them. There's so many different stories that we can tell from, I try not to, honestly, Mel, I try not to walk into any room and use it as an automatic crutch. I'm gonna walk in,
Yes.
and I'm on the same level as X, Y, Z, A, B, and C, right? So, and I walk in with that, although it never stops in the back of your head knowing the level you stand on, right? So you never lose yourself, but at the same time, I'm not going to give you that ammo. I'm not going to let you take it away from me, things like that. But I try to, again, not make that the forefront of my thought process. And I'm just going to perform. Like you were saying, Carmen, I knew it was opportunities. And I think many women who stay in this long, they know that they have to outshine, they have to work a little harder, things like that. One thing we didn't talk about as a challenge is work-life balance. I think one of us spoke about having kids. Mel, I think it was you, but I too have children, married, so things like that. Being able to stay on top of your game and balance that with still being a mother, a wife, things like that. I mean, that to me is also a challenge, because while I was worried about who's gonna watch my kids when I have duty, counterparts don't always have to worry about this. There's not that level of stress, not all of them, so there's so much more that comes along with being a woman in this field and a lot of other fields as well, just trying to balance a career at the same time.
You're hitting it all. We can definitely stay here because you're all in that wheelhouse. This is where I believe a lot of our female service members, they're looking for mentorship and development. And how do I find fulfillment? How do I create harmony? How do I find that balance? And you hit definitely a lot of it. It's all about the support structure. We'll talk about that, because when you start talking about being the only one in the room, I'm curious as to where did that mentorship and development come from, right? And they don't always have to look like you. They're coming from all circles. So let's go into the next question, Chief Noel. What do you view as pressing issues for female veterans?
I think that one of the pressing issues would be mental health. I think that a lot of times, being in the military, and being a woman, we wear many hats, and sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. A lot of times we want to be all things to all people, but we forget to take care of self sometimes. So when it comes to that mental health piece, I think that just the balancing act, the military is a microcosm of society. And there's a lot of things going on, a lot of issues, pressing issues for mental health right now, especially after COVID. We're going to come through COVID, but we're going to be dealing with the mental health crisis in America. And the military is not exempt from it. And I would tell anybody being in the military, seek counseling. We can all benefit from laying on somebody's couch. If it's professional counseling, spiritual counseling, just recognize that, we're going to deal with so many different stressors just being in America today. So seek the necessary counseling. And then when it comes to just family dynamics, a lot of times we can lose ourselves in uniform and forget about family. make sure you make time for your family while you're on active duty. Spend that quality time with them so that when you come out of uniform, you won't feel like you have to get to know your family all over again. But definitely mental health and family relationships is very important.
Thank you for that. I absolutely agree. So the most recent point in time count reported that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, identified that over 4,300 women, veterans, who were experiencing homelessness. This comprises 9.1% of the entire veteran homeless population. Let me say that again. This comprises 9.1% of the entire veteran homeless population. So Command Sergeant Major Morales, what do you think can be done to reduce this rate?
Well, this is a very good question, very interesting and serious subject. I think that something that we need to do is reach out more to our female veterans out there. We have tons of ways of communicating these days. I mean, back in the day when we were growing up, there was no internet, there was no Facebook, there was no social media whatsoever. We have a good opportunity now to help these women that are facing this homelessness just at such a high rate by using those resources that we have available to us. You know, women, we have to reach out to other women. We cannot keep all the knowledge, all of the resources. We cannot keep that to ourselves. We cannot just look at this number and go, you know what, it's happening. I don't see it, right? Because I live wherever I live, but it's happening. And because you don't see it, you don't pay attention to it. Then we come to meetings and different gatherings, and we start talking about it, and then we forget about it again until somebody comes back and say, hey, this is happening. So I think that one thing we need to do is reach out to more women, share more knowledge, share resources, bring them to our tribe, help women find their tribe, find like-minded women, and let them know that they're not alone. You know, and it's okay if you're going through something so difficult. It's okay. You can trust me. But we cannot just say you can trust me. We have to show them that, by God, we're here and we are going to support each other. You know, I know we have in Georgia, you know, we have, and I'm going to mention this because maybe this is something that someone else can do in a different state. But in the state of Georgia, we have these organizations, the Georgia Military Group, over 4,000 members, you know, and when you go on that page, you have resources, you have, you know, there are social events, women get together, women share what they learn, you know, they check on each other. And I think that if we took a more strong stance on this, we could help. I think we could make a difference. We can make a little, even if it's a little dent. Because it's happening, and I know that I'm not the smartest person in this group. I know that people are thinking about it, how to fix it, but how come it's not fixed yet? So I think it's us. We need to take that step and start helping out our sisters, you know?
Yeah, that percentage was pretty disturbing to me, because I know, just like Chief Noel mentioned, you know, you have to consider depression in that. You have to consider mental health in that, and things that individuals are trying to fight through. Any other leader have anything to add to that comment?
Not add, but I'm gonna tell you, Carmen hit it right on the head. I mean, I just want to add on, I guess. Even before I retired, I stopped and just, you know how you looking through LinkedIn and things like that, and I was watching some groups that catered towards the homelessness, and it still like took me aback. Like, I couldn't believe that there was so many out there. When you're active, you're kind of full throttle in one direction sometimes, right? So you don't always look to the left and right. for action. But it weighed on me even then, you know, that we had so many. I didn't understand, and I always ask like someone, I'm like, why is there so many? There's so many resources for transition in all of our services, I'm sure. So why are there so many? You know, so we kind of touched on a lot of the mental health piece, but I think to your point, Carmen, it's hard, not impossible, but many people get out or retire, and being able to wrap your arm around so many is, I think, is the difficult challenge, because 50 states, people are just gone, you know, and you don't really know. But if we can educate better while they're in, I think that will help better. Like, why do we wait to the very end to start talking about some of these topics and issues and things like that? We wait to the very end when they start to transition, and some of them get out really quick. But if we understand so much, and not just from the homelessness side, but even as a retiree, I think there's so many resources out there that I should have known 10 years ago. You know, why are we waiting to the very end, transition, what, 12 months, 18 months before you get out? I mean, there's so much, it's like a water hose. So I think we'd be better off trying to catch them before they even get out, or some of the things that the resources that can be provided to them. And not even that they're going to be in that type of situation, but something may click in their head 4 years from now. They may remember that there are people out there, and there's a lot more resources than they think, and they're not alone. I think that's the key thing, that they're not alone. But when you get out, depending on how you get out, you know, I don't know everybody's story, but I know some that I know who left out don't always leave out on good terms, right? So it is not always on good terms, but understanding and knowing that there's still a resource and a family out there. Like we have a saying, once a Marine, always a Marine. And even that, I mean, even though you say it, do you really feel it when you actually get out, right? So a lot of organizations got to make sure that we wrap our arms around them. And I'm gonna leave you with one word: action. Yeah. Just simply action, because we got the resources, we have the actual organizations, but action is what I think we're lacking. So just to add on to what Carmen put out there.
I like to
have something. I have something. So just to, as we say in the Navy, piggyback on what both Carmen and Robin said, I think as we work in these groups and we're involved, we also need to tear down the stigmatisms that are attached to asking for help. Because if we do 4 years, 14 years, 24 years, 30 years, because we've gone through and had so many challenges, we don't want to ask for help, because we're known for getting things done as females. So when we fall on our sword, or we have a hard time or whatever, we don't want to let a lot of people know. That's the stuff we don't put on social media. If we can't find a job, or if we're struggling, if we can't find something, so we don't talk about it, because there's a level of embarrassment there. And like Helen hit on earlier about the mental health piece, that's big. So here I am, I may have, made whatever rank in the military, in any of the services, and now I'm homeless. I'm living out of a car. Who am I going to tell? I'm embarrassed. Who am I going to ask for help? I'm not going to necessarily go and stand on the corner, because I don't want anybody to see me. So that's one of the many things that, as veterans, folks suffer in silence, because they think nobody's going to listen, or they think they're not worthy, or they think somebody's going to say, oh, you didn't plan financially to get out. You didn't pay off whatever sometimes that's not the case. Things happen, and PTSD is real as well. So folks aren't, once again, you never know what's going on in somebody's head, whether they actually want the help or want to look at the resources. So I think if we do something about knocking down the stigmatisms, I think that would help as well.
I'd like to add something too, Melvina, especially considering that you're still on active duty. I think that as people are transitioning, that maybe we should look more towards the transition assistance programs, and maybe appoint a mentor or a sponsor, someone who is already retired, so that we can start, reaching out and just being there for people. Because just like with AA, for instance, when they get a sponsor, they keep a sponsor. So you can't tell me that there's not enough military retirees out there that would raise their hand and say, yeah, I would like to show them the ropes, without them having to actually come to them. if they start doing that and making that a part of the transition program where they appoint a sponsor or a mentor, we may be able to catch some of those people and save them before they get out there like that, because they'll always have to give an account.
I think that's great, because as you were talking, all of you, as you were talking, I was writing down connections, right? Communicating, caring. I did put down TAPS, right? And making sure that awareness and education starts earlier. But I like that mentorship as well. That individual that's going to be there to check on you, because you're not going to always have the courage to reach out, especially when we start talking about when you start dealing with trying times and there's some of that embarrassment that comes with that. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for that. It is a sensitive subject, but it's also a real situation that's happening right now. Sergeant Major Fortner, what are some of the actions you took to ensure diversity and inclusion wasn't just a buzzword, but actually instituted at every level when you're in the service? You talked a little bit about that, and I'll tell you, I have heard of that. Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belonging is actually meaning it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll highlight one so that everybody have a chance, but let's go back to that unit that we talked about in the beginning where we were testing the combat roles. And I don't know if anybody's heard of the unit. It was called the GCEITF. And it was back in 2014, 2015, and it affected all the services, but the Marine Corps was the only one that kind of took this unit, and we actually tested the theory, if you will. And it was in place for at least 18 months. But the crutch of that, when you talk about diversity and inclusion, where we took males from several different combat MOSs, and we incorporated women of various MOSs from all across the Marine Corps to include the reserve side as well. And I just remember we kind of built the plane on the fly, if you will, meaning we have never done this before. So no one really had a clue of how to do it. But one thing, as the Sergeant Major there, you know, we have a lot to do with people, right? And people are our biggest asset. And I just remember sitting back, watching them in the very, very beginning, and there was a lot of questions and just a lot of uncertainty from both sides. You know, I have females on one side, males on another. And I was like, we can't do this. It has to be inclusive. If we're truly going to test this, I can't just talk to one side. I can't just speak to another. We have to completely engulf both of you and let it all out of what your fears are, things like that, you know. And I really found, and I say it a lot of times, I found that success for that unit came when I started to ensure that the males understood what diversity and inclusion meant and why we were there, and really ensuring that they were part of that process, not just, I was told to be here and I'm just going to make this happen because Congress or for political reasons and things like that. I really focused on the men, various, I'm talking from the youngest to, you're talking, Colonel was the highest rank we had. So from the PFC, the E2, all the way up to the 05, 06 level, and making sure that they understood why we were actually there and how to bring, I don't know about y'all, but if you ever been to an integrated type of unit, sometimes there's a fear of how do I incorporate these females as if we're some foreign entity? How do I incorporate these females into training alongside? And there was actual fear, if you will. So I really wanted to make sure that we broke down and understood there was a difference between the fact that they just happened to be there and how do we really incorporate them into the training and you be a viable and efficient leader where you never thought you could be, because that was some of the questions that they had. You know, and that's just one example. I was having a conversation not too long ago, and I don't know if y'all know the stats, but the Marine Corps is only 8% females. You all beat us by, I don't know, at least I'm talking probably even over 50%. Every other service is in the double digits. We're still in the single digits as far as having females in the Marine Corps. And you know that, but it doesn't always sit in your head sometimes. So I told people, I think one thing we can do better to include is concentrate better on the majority and making sure that they understand and educating the majority on how to incorporate females into their units. We still struggle with that concept. So that was just very, very successful successful for that unit because of the challenges that we had. straight men who had never served with a female ever in their entire career. And how do you just automatically just put them together? You know, that's a recipe for disaster. So I really spent a lot of time one-on-one, kneecap to kneecap with every male there to make sure that everybody understood how to do that. And then after a while, you sit back and you watch the magic and you realize, oh, so we can coexist. Oh, we are all human. Okay, she can still pick up that pack and do the exact same thing. Got it. You know, and you can see the dynamics of how they began to coalesce together.
That's a great story. Master Chief Scott, another sensitive topic I want to talk about is sexual violence and sexual harassment. These are significant issues in the military. According to 2018 Workplace and Gender Relations Survey of Active Duty Members Overview Report, an anonymous survey is conducted every 2 years. 6.2% of DoD women have experienced sexual assault. Understanding that there are resources available to our veterans, what more do you think could be done to ensure they have awareness of those resources and they know the assistance that's available to them?
That's a near and dear one to me. You talked about the resources, but definitely getting the information out there. Right now, the services are big on suicide prevention, and you look at television, you look on social media, and you see there are challenges, 22 push-ups, 22 days, all sorts of things pertaining to suicide. But when you talk about sexual assault or sexual harassment or things like that, it's not out there. It's not something that you see, hey, if this happens to you, until after the fact. All the services, I think, are very reactive. They're getting better with being proactive, but they're very reactive, because there is the kind of like going back to what Robin said, that, you know, that coexisting with the males and the females, you know, my situation being unique in the Navy, the Marines were able to be out in the field or out in the building. If you take males and females and have them cohabitate on a ship, and you're gone for 6 months at a time, that's a whole nother world. You have spaces where people get together. It's a whole bunch of stuff. So, but back to your question, putting the information out there, making it big, making it blow up, and then once again, the embarrassment. Who's going to believe me if I say one of my senior enlisted or one of the officers did whatever to me or violated me in some way, fashion, or form? I'm a junior sailor. I'm an airman. So who's going to believe me when I go and tell? And then who's going to flip it back on me because of perhaps the way I look, or the way I dress, the way I carry myself? So who's going to believe me? So getting the resources out there, once again, knocking down the stigmatism and letting folks know it's okay to tell you, but you have to trust the people. It has to be a very unique screening process and who you allow to be involved. The Navy calls it a SAPR program. Not quite sure what other services call it, but it has to be a very unique screening process, because the worst case scenario is that you go to somebody that you're supposed to be able to confide in about what's happened. And for us, you find out it's on the ship. Somebody's talked about it, and you're like, you're devastated, because now it pretty much something that was supposed to be held in confidence is now out. So making sure that the right people are in the right places at the right times to get both male and female help. I know of sexual assault on both sexes, so it's not just a female thing. It happens to the males, unfortunately, as well.
You're right. Anyone else like to share their thoughts on this before we move forward?
Yeah, I'd like to share something. I think that I know that when I was on active duty, that they had the Victim Support Liaison Program. Do they still have the VSL, Melvina?
Yes.
Are you aware of that? They still have that? So I think that, you know, when it comes to sexual assault, I'm a victim of military sexual trauma, as a matter of fact. When I graduated from high school, my sister was stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and I went out there to visit her. And I was date raped, basically. I know that I was given some drug because I woke up in a very compromising position. And because at the time, my sister was military police and she carried a gun and she knew this person, I decided that I could handle it. And I never told anybody. And I ended up joining the same institution that victimized me. And I suppressed it for 26 years, ended up going on making chief and everything. And not until I got out of uniform did I deal with that thing. And I would tell anybody, if you're on active duty, a lot of women are sexually harassed on active duty. I was sexually harassed by someone who I worked for. He was my commander and he was my supervisor. And I had to approach him about that because I just felt some type of way. But I think that if people start talking about it more, and we have to get it off of the military installation as far as judicial punishment, because as long as you're dealing with people right within your command, it may never come open, it may never come out, because of the simple fact that if it's somebody that you're working for, a lot of times people will feel like I can't come to you and tell you that because you're the person that is harassing me. So I think it needs to be something that's moved off base so that people will feel more freely to speak about it.
Thank you, and thanks for sharing your story. You're absolutely right. There are some issues with that when people start thinking about the power and authority, and it's in that unit. So sometimes if they have that safeguard outside of that organization, like you said, with the judicial process, it can assist a little bit more. Chief Noel, I'm going to stay with you and ask you the next question. It's been stated that enlisted women don't always stay in the service long enough to get promoted to the top ranks and hold key positions. Why do you think this is, and what advice can you give young women to convince them why they should make the military service a career?
I think that a lot of times when people aren't staying in, it's because of toxic leadership. I think that Chief Khalif, Chief Wright, he spoke about it and he was very open about it, because what tends to happen is a lot of times, when you come in the military, you're relying on people who are of higher rank to get you to that next place. You can't always rely on that, because people are going to teach you what to do and what not to do. And I would find that more often than not, I had a lot of bad leaders who was teaching me what not to do. But I thank God that I had enough sense and wherewithal to know I'm not going to do that when I become of a certain rank. But I think that when it comes to that overall, you got to know what you want for yourself. If you're coming in the military today, you got to realize, and you need to get a mentor and talk to people about what the military is really about, because a lot of people have misconceptions about what the military really is. And we just need to keep it real. It's good things about the military and it's bad things about the military. But I think that if we talk to the right people and climb that ladder to success, people just need to realize, to thine own self be true. And the military, it's not for everybody.
Yeah. Any other leaders want to add to that?
I'll add a little bit on top of toxic. You're talking about attrition and making sure that people stay in. I'll go back to the work-life balance a little bit. I think a lot of females get out sometimes because they want to start a family. And they see how hard it is, especially during the time frame where we were deploying. And there's people deploying back to back. That's tough. When you have to leave your child or even your spouse, that's just tough. So I've run into many women who juggle and have a hard time juggling and feel guilty. That's one thing I think a lot of us have learned through, that they feel guilty that they have to leave their children. And when they come back, especially if the children are younger, do the children know them? They're calling somebody else mommy, things like that. It just depends on how old, but a lot of people struggle with balancing their career with their family. And somebody said in the very beginning how important family is. The longer you mature, you really understand family first. And I think as moms, that's innate to us. That's just to our character and who we are as women, that our family needs to come forward. But you struggle also, you know, being and making sure that you can hold your own in the military. And to do that, somebody sometimes suffer, and there's some sacrifices that has to be made on one side or the other. So I think many people actually struggle with that and just stop sometimes and say it's not worth it. It's not worth it to continue on. You know, and that's good and that's bad, right? Because I think you said it, it's not necessarily for everybody, but there is some importance to see somebody who looks like you at the top. Somebody on the wall that looks like you know, where you understand that those opportunities are there, and that's, you have something to strive for. You know, somebody to be in that room with toxic leadership to speak on behalf of others, or to show what right's supposed to look like and break down some preconceived notions of maybe what females are, you know. So that, you know, it is important on both sides. And I always try to look and see who's moving up the ranks and where they are in their family and what is it that they really want to do. But there comes with a lot of responsibility the longer you stay in. I say again, you know, there's only 8% of women in the Marine Corps. And by the time you get past E8 or so, you almost know everybody. You know, even for my rank as an E9, when you talk about Sergeant Major wise, there was literally only 20, 21, 22 on average. There's more people on this Zoom call than there is an entire Marine Corps at the rank of Sergeant Major. More people on the Zoom call. And you're talking over hundreds of thousands of Marines. You know, so those things like that, you tend to know everybody, but is it enough? You know, so we still struggle with making sure that representation is at the senior levels, because it needs to be, to keep people in and to make sure that they understand that the opportunities are there.
So Sergeant Major Fortner, every time you talk, you make me write down another question to ask you. So it's just growing now, right? So because when you start talking about the representation, right away, I think about, are we obligated? Do we have a responsibility to grow, develop, right? Mentor that talent, if it's there as well, to continue to have that representation across the forces?
And when you say we, Mel, you're talking about who, the institution? You're talking about us individually, or who's
the
we?
Institution and us as well, right? So when you see that individual, absolutely both.
Yeah, so I mean, I think yes and yes, but differently, right? So I think yes, the institution has that responsibility, but I think the institution will argue that they have resources already there, right? But it doesn't mean that they're used efficiently for everybody. And I think that's the key where I go with the diversity and inclusion thing of feeling actually included and belonging to the institution that you actually belong to, you know? So I think, yes, I think for many of us, and I'll speak for myself only, I took it upon myself to be that. I said a long time ago, even past the 20-year mark, I'm not staying anymore for me. I stopped staying for me. I understood, and I told myself, you're staying for everybody else behind me. And that's how I lived my last 10 years in the Marine Corps, is who am I bringing with me? What am I teaching them? What do I know? And how can I help them know what I know and break down that wall faster than I did? And I'm gonna be honest, not just women, it could also be men. I have a group of mentees, if you will, that I also bring along as much as possible. I'm not perfect and I don't have it all, but I learned that the institution wasn't doing enough. Although there was resources out there, I kind of still had to get my foot into doors of those resources, or open those doors to those resources, or knock on those doors of the resources and say, hey, I'm here. What am I? Don't assume I know just because I'm an E9, right? You know, there's tiers to this. Once you start getting slated, for us, it's called slate at a general's level, or you move up as an E9, right? So for the Marine Corps, when you become Sergeant Major, it's like being a command Sergeant Major your entire time. We just don't call it that, but you're in command your entire time as a Sergeant Major. You leave your previous MOS, and that is strictly what you do. So for the last 20 or so years, at least 15, I've been in a command type of level. And I knew that it's important for people to see me, people to hear me, not because Robin is anything, it's because I'm a Black female. And we need to break down barriers. I am a minority that many don't always see. And I want to walk in there, you know, representing completely to the fullest. I want to be able to articulate. I want to educate myself. I want to, you know, do those things that is going to put me right there at that seat and make sure that they know I've earned my place at this seat. Not perfect, don't get me wrong, but is it a responsibility? Absolutely. And everybody behind me, if they know, if I speak to them and I say things like Fortner trained and I use words like each one, teach one, and it does my heart good that people are still using these terms, because it'll continue on after I leave. It's you have a responsibility to teach someone else and bring them along. If you're climbing by yourself, that's selfish, you know, and I honestly could do without you because there's another one just like you, right? But if you're bringing someone along with you, then now I use that word, Carmen, now we're growing that tribe and I'm educating that tribe, and I'm not waiting on an institution. That's something else. Don't wait for somebody to give it to you. Let's go out and seek it. Again, not perfect, but I do think that yes and yes to your question. I think institutions can do better. Absolutely. I think they're blinded. I go with the education piece again. I think they're blinded sometimes because it doesn't affect them. So they don't feel like there's really necessarily a problem out there. When they walk into a room, they see all the white men on the wall. They cool with that. But when we walk into the room and see all the white men on the wall, it reminds me of, and not to bring any politics whatsoever in it, but if you see right now the picture of, you know, Senator Harris and every other vice president prior to, just look at that picture. You know, that's kind of what it feels like when you walk into a room and you're just like, huh, okay. But you sit down anyway, you know, and you stand up tall and all those good things that we learn to do. But absolutely a responsibility that I took on myself. And I think many others do the exact same thing.
Yeah, pay it forward. Pay it forward. Command Sergeant Major Morales, in 2019, the VA released its National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report, which stated that suicide rate for veterans were 1.5 times the rate of non-veteran adults. The rate for women veterans in active service was 28.7%. In your opinion, what can be done for early recognition of our women in distress and to reduce the number of fellow veterans being lost to suicide?
Yeah, this is another number that really, just like with the homelessness, this is another statistic that really, it hurts me. It is something that I almost feel like I cannot believe that my sisters, you know, our tribe, go through what they're going through right now. You know, we have, at least I can speak for the Army, we have training, you know, we teach people, we have resources, you know, and it's out there, but there's a disconnect. And I think that throughout the night, we have been realizing that there's a disconnect somewhere. And even though we teach and we coach and we mentor and we try to help, there's still that disconnect. And I go back to, you know, we need to reach out to more people. We just have to do it. You know, I know as leaders, we have a million things to do. You know, when you're in a command position, you have a million things to do, but you also have a million people that work with you, right? That can relay that message and let your people know what's available and how they, you know, how they can be helped. So we need to continue now that we're out, and I'm talking about us, this group here, and the people that are listening to us. We need to reach out to people, to these women. We need to use social media. We need to, you know what, get out and go and walk downtown Atlanta and look around. Go out there and be present. You know, like Sergeant Mayor said, it's action. We cannot continue to talk about data and statistics and going, yeah, it's happening, but it's not happening here yet. You know, it's like COVID. We didn't believe in COVID because it was happening, but it wasn't here in my block. So it's the same thing, it's happening, but we need to reach out. You know, I mentioned earlier today, the Georgia military group, you know, there's plenty of resources and there's plenty of women, smart women, women with resources, women that can do for other women. We have Humble Warrior, you know, Humble Warrior, this organization, we provide wellness retreats for women. And it's we used to do 3 days. We have gone down to 1 day, and you know, we do yoga and we do journaling and we talk to each other and we provide them with resources. You know, I'm going to give you the yoga mat and I'm going to call you and you can call me and you can communicate with me. And we do that. But, and we trying to spread that message. Hey, we got 12 of you here today. When you leave on Sunday, please reach out to 12 more, to 24, to 36, you know? And I think that's where, I think that's where it's stopping, is because we're going about our lives and forgetting about who we're leaving behind. So we need to reach out, find these women, help them, give them the resources, make them aware of what's out there for them, and then just spread the word.
And you know, you saw on the Facebook or the internet, social media, the 22 push-ups to provide awareness for suicides. You know, right. I will tell you, I just wrote a letter and coined a young man because I went to a base and someone told me and showed me a video of one of our young airmen who said, hey, I understand that everyone is doing 22 push-ups for suicide awareness, but instead I'm going to call a veteran every day for 22 days and let them know, hey, you're out now, but I'm just calling to check on you, man. I'm just calling to check on you. And he recorded it, right? And some of them was very honest, like, hey, I didn't feel like no one cared when I was in. I appreciate you calling out and checking on me. I'm doing great. And there was some aha moments from him, you know, but I coined him and I said, hey, I appreciate what you're doing and how you're doing it in your own way. And he wrote back and said, Chief, I never thought that no one would even know what I'm doing and the impact this made. But it not only made an impact to them, it made an impact to me because I got to connect with them again. And I got to say, hey, this is the difference you made to me. Why can't we do that now when we see them every single day? We see them every day. You know, we should take that 5 to 10 minutes time it takes to say, hey, this is what you mean to me, or we care about you, or I just want to put eyes on you and check on you. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Can I add to that? I just got a little story. Look, I know I already got I always have a story, but to that, because that's dear to me as well. I do the same thing, Mel. Like, I will not participate in the 22 push-ups. That's great. I mean, I did it at first and I was like, it's not doing anything, right? But there was a story that switched my mind a little while ago. And this is actually Army, but a friend of mine served in the Army from high school, and he posted, and it wasn't 22 days as far as a push-up. It was like on the 22nd day of the month. It was supposed to be this veteran shout out, right? So it's supposed to just be shout out and everybody respond. Hey dog, I'm good, this, that, or the other. So he did that. This was probably about, I don't know, maybe a year ago now. And he put it out there, everyone's responding, most of them Army. And I just kind of was scanning the comments, and this one person said, I'm not good. Or I can't remember his exact words, but he made a comment that should have drew some type of concern. And I watched it and I watched it and I watched, and I hit Chris up, his name. I like hit him up on the side. I was like, hey dog, you got this person who apparently you served with or somehow, and look what he's saying, kind of thing, right? Yeah. So it was just so heavy on my heart that I reached out to the guy, and I learned that he was homeless in the streets of Atlanta, couldn't keep a job. I mean, you name it. He was going through some stuff and on the verge of mental health break and suicide. And all I did is I called a bunch of Marine friends that I knew in Atlanta and was like, can you go to this spot? Can you go and check on this dude right here? He was living in some shelter, half in his car, trying to get a job, whatever. But I had to ask him to the point of mental health. I said, look, I'm calling on my friends. You got to tell me the truth. Be real with me. What's really going on with you? What are you on? You know, so I know what my friends are getting into at the same time. And he admitted, I mean, from the drugs to alcohol, you know, hitting rock bottom. And we caught this guy in enough time, at least to lift them up to say, you got someone there for you. And I watched this guy throughout the whole time. And next thing I know, he's got a job at a trunking company. You know, he's found a relationship a year later, you know, had a baby. And I was like, look at that. Story. Look at that. So from that point on, I always knew, I was like, I'm reaching out to people versus just, and again, I don't knock anybody. I think it's awesome. I think it is absolutely about awareness at the same time, but it goes back to the action piece. Let's do both. Let's make it a point to reach out to someone. Maybe it's not every day. Like for me, I got bogged down that every day was too much for me. So Sunday became my day. Almost like, you have Sunday dinner or something. For me, that was my day. Sunday was, I'm reaching out to somebody, and I would reach out to somebody I hadn't spoke to in a long time that may still be on my Facebook. And then somebody that, again, was a recent retiree. So I found that was been absolutely helpful. They're absolutely surprised. But that story touched my heart. And I was like, wow, if we never reached out to this guy, and actually some of my friends who actually went there to see him in person, who knows,
especially now in these unprecedented times we're dealing with, especially now.
Right.
Yeah, and I would like to say that even as on active duty as well, Mel, when I became a chief, that I would every morning before I would go and even open up my computer, I would walk around to everybody's office just to lay eyes on them. And that management by walking around principle that they used to do, people need it more today, more so than ever, because when you just walk past somebody, go into an office and just lay eyes on them and just say good morning, sometimes it just breaks the ice. And you just never know what people are going through. But we have gotten out of the habit of talking. Everybody wants to text. Everybody, just open your mouth and have a conversation with people, and you would be surprised the amount of people that will just open up and tell you things. And after a while, you'd be like, you know what I mean? But sometimes, you just really, if you open the door to communication, people want to talk. You just have to open that door.
That's good. You're absolutely right. It breaks down barriers, right? And makes you approachable.
Hi, I want to just add a little something to that. When I was in a leadership position, when I was in active duty, I would have a lot of chiefs working for me, 7s, 8s, and 9s and stuff. And Navy calls it deck plate leadership or intrusive leadership. So before the weekend was out, definitely the weekend, because unfortunately, sailors they have a stigma. Sailors drink, drunken sailor, that's not always the case. But I would have to make sure that I would go to my leadership and say, I want to know what's going on with your people. And if you communicated with your people enough, you would automatically know who were your high-risk sailors. You knew what was going on. So didn't hesitate. Some folks didn't want to be bothered. Why are you trying to be in my business or something like that? But that's something I've carried with me, even into my retired life. No matter where I am, I'm going to want to know, hey, shoot me a text and let me know if you're going to be late. I just want to know that you're not in a ditch somewhere or something like that. I just want to make sure that you're safe. That's a part of that nurturing piece that we continue to have in leadership. So folks, like they said, folks to know that we're there. I started a mentorship group a couple of years ago called Each One Reach One. And it started out as a group for minority female master chiefs, kind of like what's going on right here. So there was a time when it was everybody knew everybody. So what we do is we get together quarterly and we meet and we talk, and then we bring in the folks of the senior chiefs or the chiefs or something like that, because the leadership, it has to start from the top. So you're only as good as your leadership. So if your leadership is jacked up, then it's going to flow downhill. So how can somebody aspire to be like me if I'm messy? So what I think as leaders, and being not above reproach, because we're not perfect, as Robin said, and as Helen said, we're not perfect at all, but somebody has to know that we care, that we matter. We haven't gotten to the point where it's just about us. So that's what my group does. We meet, we talk, we try to still mentor and things like that, because like somebody's already said, it's a lot of hurting folks out there, especially like you said, I believe, Mel, especially now.
Yeah.
So folks have to know that we care.
I think our audience is really enjoying this conversation we're having. We're gonna transition so that we can hear their questions. But before we do, I'll end with one more question. What advice do you have for veterans transitioning from the military? And this is for the panel, and we'll open it up to questions from the audience.
I would say start downshifting before you get out. You know, I knew when I was on active duty that I was spun up. And I mean, when it came time for me to retire, I said, I'm going to give myself about a year and I'm going to downshift because I was in 5th gear. And I let everybody know it, including my supervisors. I'm not doing that anymore because I was doing way too much. I was raising everybody else's children but my own. And I said, you know what? I'm downshifting. And I literally felt myself moving from 5th gear down to the 1st gear. When it came time for me to retire, and I wouldn't recommend this for you active duty folks, I had so many emails unread, and it was all good. We just have to give ourselves permission to not do everything and to not be all things to all people. And so that for me, it saved me because there's no way that I could have retired and still been in 5th gear because I may have been one of those suicide candidates. So I would tell people, just give yourself permission to take care of you and do it before you retire.
Drop the mic on her.
I had to learn that. Thank you for saying what you said, Helen. I had to learn that after the fact. For those folks that know me and knew me in the Navy, I absolutely positively unequivocally adored the Navy. I would be sailing right now if I had the opportunity. So when I could only do 30 years, the transition for me was hard because, you know, the saying, if you're having fun, you know, when you stop having fun, it's time to go. I was still having fun, you know, but it was time for me to go. So I probably, it's funny now, my best friend is probably watching this and laughing. I was crying 2 years out. I was like, you know, and it's not like I didn't know what to do. I didn't have other options, but I loved what I did. I loved being around sailors. I loved the nurturing. It drove, you know, borderline drove me crazy from time to time. But this, you know, I believe God allowed me to do that. That was my God appointed place, was the military, and that he allowed me to prosper along with having some really wonderful sailors work for me. So the transition was hard. So I would say, kind of like what Helen said, give yourself permission, but allow yourself, you know, if you have to go, I went through a mourning period. I mean, I was, you know, from the hours of, let's say 6 to 11, I was miserable. You know, my mother asked me, she said, well, baby, does the military, does Navy offer any sort of classes to help with the transition? I said, they offer classes to talk about resumes and how, you know, how to look for jobs and how to do whatever. But nobody offered anything to tell me how to deal with something I'd done the bulk of my adult life and something I loved and I was so passionate about. So after about noontime, I was honored. I was excited because that would be the time that I was going home. But in the mornings when I would be having meetings, I would, you know, it was really bad. So give yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Give yourself time to mourn. That's where the counseling comes in. That's where the VA piece comes in. Go and sit down and talk to somebody, because if I'm single, I don't have any children, all of that's by choice, 0 regrets. But if your service is what you did, and that's what you were comfortable with, and that's what you were good at, it's like losing a part of yourself or losing a loved one or detaching from something that you've been attached to. So if you need to go sit down and get some counseling prior to, it's okay. And don't be ashamed of that, because you're leaving something you love, and sometimes it's not replaceable. I work around sailors now. I see them. I'm happy when I see the ships. I love the water. So I'm kind of still in the same role, but I don't bring it home with me. But give yourself time to mourn and don't beat yourself up about that. That's it.
I guess I'm the newbie. So for those who don't know, it's only been a month. So I don't really feel it like everybody else, but I will say it's been a process. And I've accepted the fact that it's a process. So at the end of the day you're officially retired, I didn't just drop everything. I think, Helen, you're right. There's a downshifting process, if you will, that I know I have to go through. I know I do, because listening to both of y'all, I'm like right in the middle. You're right, Gina. I mean, that's what I did. That's my adult life. That's what I know. That's who I am at the same time. And I'm okay with that. But other side, I think that has helped me. I also feel fulfilled.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I feel fulfilled. My 30 years has been fulfilling. So I know that has helped me not, look at it and embrace the process. So for me, I'm embracing it. I tried to stop using the word retired, meaning not so much in the technical sense, but, just feeling like I have to just do nothing because I haven't stopped moving. I don't know if that's good or bad yet, right? I will figure that out. But I've changed the retirement to refocus, reinvent. I try to find these other words every day. I'm saying these other words to myself, like, I'm going to refocus my energy. I'm going to really reflect. And I've done that in this past couple of months, really reflect on what's been going on, and enjoying and looking at it and embracing how well I've done, and with complete surprise to my own self, because this was never a plan 30 years ago. And so I like that part. Like, I'm enjoying this part of the transition. I'm enjoying this. I think, again, COVID helped downshift a little bit, if that makes sense. Because right before I retired, people kind of, we were separated a lot, so, it helped me to downshift a little bit right before I actually left and took off the uniform. But for any advice to anybody else, I would say, don't forget to plan and prepare. And I think that too, it's no stress for me, as far as that's concerned. I still don't quite know everything that I want to be when I grow up per se, but I know who I am, if that makes sense. I know what I love to do. So my reflection and my refocus and my reinventing has all been in that direction. Started a new business, love mentoring, love consulting, and so this is what I love to do. And retirement has given me the time to really continue down that path. And we'll see where it goes, don't get me wrong, but I think I've enjoyed, what the process has been. Doesn't mean I don't miss. It doesn't mean, I need to stay connected in some way. I want to still serve. And I'm doing that. So as long as I do platforms like this, or, open up in ways, listening to all of y'all, we'll talk offline here. How can we get out there and have that action, if you will? And I just found 4 more sisters, inside the DOD. I'm with you, Helen. To me, it's 4 more sisters. I don't care what service you're in, right? So that's a network, and we're stronger together. So I've enjoyed this, building on this right here. And I think, again, if we look at it differently, everybody's different, but I'm just sharing my journey because I'm fresh at this, just recently retired. So you're talking 1 month officially retired. I'm still fresh, but I am enjoying what I'm doing right now.
So anything to add, Command Sergeant Major Morales?
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. When I was planning to retire, I didn't do any of that. I stay completely engaged, going through ACAP, learning how to write a resume, doing all those things while I was still talking to the guy that replaced me, and still talking to recruiters and people. And then after that, 16 days after I retired, I started working. So what happened by not doing what you ladies, I wish I had known you then, what happened, it extended my transition time for over 2 years. I was still crazy. I was still yelling at people in the train station if I saw them in uniform. I was still talking to my former commander. I was still talking to former, sergeants major, and I was still in that mode. One thing that I did right though, and someone told me, have a plan for the day after your retirement day. Know what time you're going to get up, know the time, what you're going to wear, and get out of the house, go on to something, have a plan, because that's going to be a very disheartening day, you know, because you just gonna continue to miss it. And Sergeant Major, I promise you, you just continue to miss it. It's a transition, but I think that I will tell someone that is transitioning right now, do those things, downshift, and remove yourself a little bit from all of that, and actually prepare yourself, have a plan for the next day, and trust in the skills that you learn, you know, while you were in the military. I mean, you know, your motivation, determined, you know, resilient, perseverance, you know, you have a work ethic, you're strong, you know, you are. So take all those things and help yourself mourn, heal, and move on to whatever is next for you. So, which I wish I had known you before.
Chief Barnes, Chief Davis, over to you to hear from the audience.
Great. We have some questions from Facebook and Zoom. The first question is from Renette Myers. If you had children while you were serving, how did you help them get acclimated to new duty stations? Any advice you can give to active duty families?
How do we help them to get acclimated to new duty stations as a whole? Is that what she was asking?
Yes.
A lot of times, depending on the age of the child, you know, it's age appropriate things that you have to teach them. But I would tell you that a lot of times, if they're probably like junior high and younger, a lot of times kids can just kind of go with the flow and just fit in, unless you have that special type of child to where they don't really want to be bothered with only certain people. So if you teach them, you know, that spirit of, you know, you have to be creative when it comes to children. You know, tell them, you know, you're going to meet more friends, you know, better friends, you know, good opportunities, you know, you want to give them a reason and tell them that they are part of the transition as well. You know what I mean? Give them things to do. You just got to get real creative when it comes to children. And if you're in the military, you have that creativity in you. So just talk to your children, be open, be upfront with them about it. If you start noticing that they're starting to have some withdrawals, don't hesitate to get them counseling services as well. But communication is good. Maybe get them a journal and let them journal and talk about it through, you know, they got to get the monkey off their back in the same way that we have to do it as adults. So just get creative with them. Don't hesitate to get them a counselor, get them a book, let them journal about it, any way that they can express themselves. And then also you can, you know, when in their schools, they have counselors. You know, if you need to reach out to some teachers and let them know, because a lot of times teachers know the challenges that military families face. So you can communicate that with them as well. And get yourself a network so that you can have people checking on your children as well. But they tend to adapt.
Okay, I have a question from Jeanette. And this question is, what advice would you give women of color coming up in the ranks?
Be persistent, accept adversity. If you make some bad decisions, you know, I made bad decisions as a junior sailor, but you know, once again, I give God all the glory and great people working for me. And I share that testimony often with people. So that's kind of like a drawer, something that draws people in, that allows me to mentor. I can say, you know what, as a E5, I was, oh my goodness, I was a mess. But mentorship, some wise counsel, lots of prayer, you know, I overcame and I got to where we all are. But don't be afraid to if you make some bad decisions, to work with somebody, find somebody to help you overcome them. Find you somebody. My motto was always to surround myself by those I wanted to emulate. So because in the beginning, I didn't see very many folks that looked like me at our pay grade, I found the closest things to it. If I saw a chief, which is an E7, or a senior chief, which is an E8, I kind of, if they were what I consider to be good and they were upholding a standard, I would try to link on to them and find out and ask those questions. When my friends were out partying, I was studying for exams. You know, I had to get there. I had to do the necessary whatever. So just persistence.
So ladies, I would like to thank you and take this opportunity to prepare to close the panel. I know that there's a lot of outstanding questions out there. We will make sure your questions get answered. But I want to take the time to thank our audience for tuning in. And a special thanks to our dynamic leaders on the panel for your continued service and investing, sewing, and developing others. This was outstanding. You didn't hold back with your answers. They were very genuine and authentic, and we appreciate that. I would even go further to say it probably needs to be a part 2, right? Because there's so much more people want to hear from you about. I learned a lot. Iron sharpens iron. Chief Barnes and Chief Davis, please close us out.
Okay, thank you much for joining us tonight. We've enjoyed listening to the wisdom, insight, and professionalism it takes to make it to the highest rank in the armed forces. These nuggets of infinite knowledge are coming from those who have paved the way for our future women military leaders.
Yes, what a great evening this was. We are looking forward to your feedback as to whether you'd like us to continue this format for future roundtables.
We want to thank you again, our illustrious roundtable. Thank you to our audience for joining us on Zoom and Facebook, and thanks for your questions. If we didn't get to your question, we will try to respond with answers to your email addresses.
To conclude tonight, we thought we'd play a video with a medley of all the Armed Forces songs. Please stay tuned and sing along with your service song.